it's interesting. Like I say, it's something that I probably spend way too much time thinking about. But I guess that's what we do in our job. It's help people and companies connect. And as I say, there has to be, I believe, more efficient ways for both to find each other at some way in the future. And whatever vehicle that looks like, I don't know. But there has to be some mechanism. There must be a solution to kind of cut through it. You know, I know as a recruiter, we can post an ad on Seek, and I can come in the morning and have 300 emails. And the reality is those 300 people that have applied are not going to get the same quality of experience, because it's impossible as a human to give that attention to that volume of information. But it also feels somewhat wrong to leave that to a computer or a piece of software.
For me, I think that's where we should be building towards synergy, right? Because I agree with you that there are certain things that I don't think our society would be improved by having completely automated.
Yes.
But wouldn't it be wonderful if synergistically the recruitment professionals and the machine learning could work together to ensure that you could, in a timely fashion, give many more people closure?
Yeah.
Because people who are searching for roles, the thing you will hear most often is that they get ghosted all the time.
Exactly right. That's right.
And from when you understand the way the recruitment market works, you understand that for the recruiters, they get 300, 400, 1,000 applications for a role. I'm excited about how, even now, this far away as I am from that particular market, I'm still excited about how you can use machine learning and some of the newer techniques that are coming out around that to make it much easier for the recruiters to give feedback at scale, or even just to give closure at scale.
Yeah.
Because I think that would benefit everybody in the very multi-sided job search marketplace.
Yeah. Look, and my next question actually is related to that, and I'm definitely away from being anywhere close to an expert on this subject, but I did read an interesting paper, and it was talking about how, I guess in simple terms, machine learning is built on, or AI is built on replicating human behavior. And as humans, we're fundamentally biased. So therefore, the more that we lean into kind of AI, particularly around recruitment, are we actually just going to exacerbate bias because the machines will replicate the human behavior? As in, there's no human that isn't biased. So you can't say to a machine, replicate this behavior of this completely unbiased person. Again, I'd love to get your thoughts. You're going to know way more about this than myself, but I was just interested what your view is on that.
It's one reason why I find it super interesting when people are quite as confident as they are that generative AI is going to make quite as large a difference as they think it will. Because I think that it's quite easy, naively, for all of us to believe that I can get this machine to give me the answer. That is what I want. I want this all-knowing sci-fi-esque computer who I can ask any question under the sun and it can give me the answer. But it doesn't take very much thought to stop and say, that implies that there is one answer. And it's, again, not a very hard sort of mental leap to think of, well, that just isn't true, is it? Because if I was asking the question and if you were asking the question, it's fairly unlikely that exactly the same answer would be the answer that you and I viewed as correct. And so I think that's where the conversation about bias begins.
Yeah.
Is that part of bias is simply that it's a very small subset of questions for which there is one exactly correct answer. And it's perhaps why I was drawn to mathematics and science, which is the subset of our world in which you're most likely to actually get precise, exact answers. The subject of bias in machine learning is enormous, and there is luckily really dedicated, research functions that really concentrate on understanding and elucidating bias. In recruitment, it was something that was always top of mind.
Yeah.
I am on record as having said, show me a fair world and I will show you a fair algorithm. But the point being, I think that it behooves you to do everything you can to remove obvious sources of bias. And at some point, you have to realise that bias is baked into how we make decisions as humans.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there are some really unpleasant cases of examples of companies who didn't pay a whole lot of attention to the training data that they were using to help those machines learn to recruit. And they did absolutely end up in exacerbating cultural stereotypes about who does what job.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to your point a couple of moments ago, which is it isn't obvious that this is a place where we should replace humans. So again, how do we work? And I think this is true across most of the fields where we would like to apply AI. How do we instead focus on creating really synergistic conditions for the humans and the machines to work together, so we can let the machines do what they do well and bring the humans in to areas where that is still critically important?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think it's something that probably within our business that we've discussed or talked about, which is we see AI as the opportunity for us to be more human.
Right.
And there could be aspects of our job that we can automate, which means we do get more human connection. We get more consultation time to speak to people about their careers and understand their desires or their challenges or their problems. And that could be a good thing. That could take us in some ways back 20 years to a box of cards when you invested in the relationships of the people that you wanted to help and were asking for help as well.
It's a really interesting point, and it was certainly something that was always top of mind for us at Xero, because we had more work than we could possibly handle in terms of where could you take machine learning inside a company which has 3 million small business owners and their advisors logging in and using your platform every day. And Xero and sort of the AI product strategy that I had there was very focused on, we have no interest in replacing bookkeepers or accountants.
Yeah.
We want to augment them. We want to do what machines do really well, to give the humans more opportunity and more scope and more time, quite frankly, to do what they do really well. So we would always focus in sort of two catchphrases that help the team really focus their attention. One was we want to remove toil and we want to delight with insight. So we want to find all those places where, for instance, reconciling your books.
Yeah.
No one really gets a huge thrill out of reconciling your books. If I can shave sub-seconds off every time you need to agree that this transaction should land in this place in your general ledger, what do you know? Bookkeepers and small business owners really, really enjoy that. Yeah. So I think that's a place where we've really focused on the right problem. We focused on the problem of how do you free time from the humans so that they can go and then either run their business, because most small business owners, with the exception of bookkeepers obviously, don't go into small business to do their books. So where can I say, here, now you have time back to go back to your florist, to go back to your plumbing job, to go back to your consulting business. And from a bookkeeper or accountant's perspective, how can I take away some of that manual toil and give you the opportunity to actually become what most small business owners really, really need, which is a financial coach and a genuine advisor who has the information about the business at their fingertips through the augmentation of machines doing some of the more toilsome tasks, but can then take that human intuition and that much greater understanding of what it's actually like to operate in the real world and bring that financial coaching to bear. So that's where I see the massive opportunity for the application of AI in a way that will raise all boats, is not to attempt to replace people wholesale, but genuinely to look at a problem and say, how do we get the humans to do what they do really well and what they will continue to find an enjoyable job, and how do we augment them functionally and really, really well with machines? And it's not a trivial thing to do, as we are seeing in a lot of the research studies that come out of the application of AI in medicine. It's actually a genuinely difficult problem to figure out how to keep humans engaged, but augment them with machines in a really productive way.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think you're right, because a lot of the doomsayers out there are saying, our jobs are going to be replaced by robots, and it's a simplification, isn't it, of the reality. Whereas it's actually, as you say, about augmenting and improving quality of life and experience.
I notice when people say that the job will be replaced by a robot, it is almost always not their job that they're talking about. And I've really sort of chewed over this in my mind, because obviously it's something I get asked about a lot at the moment. And I think it's because we don't have a very good understanding of what the actual job is when it isn't a job that we do.
Yeah.
We understand our own job really well. So we tend to realise that there are places where the machines are not going to help. We just don't have a terribly good understanding of the real job of what someone else does. And I'll give you an example. A lot of people said, we're going to be able to replace copy editors. I don't know any copy editors who think that.
Yeah.
Because they actually know what their whole job entails, not what perhaps becomes the most iconic task within their job. And the rest of us are tending to zero in on that. Oh, I'm sure that must be the job.
Yeah.
And for instance, I've heard many board members suggest that, not so much now, but certainly a year ago, that generative AI was going to replace software engineers. I've never heard a software engineer who was in the slightest bit concerned about their job security, because the fallacy there is that software engineering majority involves writing code, which of course it doesn't.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I think that gets attributed to Elon Musk, doesn't it? I think whether he said it or not, I don't know, but it gets attributed. He made a claim that software engineering will cease to exist within a decade or something to that effect. I'm going to reveal a secret, actually, which is that when we were working on this podcast, and Hayley, who's here with us today driving this, we wanted to come up with a name for the podcast. So we had a competition. So it was Hayley versus machine. So Hayley went away and came up with some names, and I sat and played around with ChatGPT and did some prompt engineering. And what was really interesting was that Hayley's name for the podcast was very similar to what ChatGPT was doing, but we ended up with a hybrid. And it enabled us to actually play around with, well, that's interesting, you came up with this is a kind of different way. And we put the two together, and that's how we ended up with the name for this podcast. Someone asked me this question yesterday, where did you come up with the name? And I shared this story, which they thought was really interesting. But it's kind of what you're talking about. Actually, we still kind of used elements of the human, elements of the machine, and we put the two together to come up with something that we found that really resonated with what we were doing. So it wasn't necessarily about replacing, and it's kind of copywriting to a certain degree what you just described, but it was augmenting and making things better. But Hayley's challenge was beat the machine, so she did.